Hey YouTube friends and family, gonna have a different day today. Alright, something I'm very enthused about. I hope you guys, if you're tuning in, this is probably something that you are interested in, and I'll let you take a gander at it first, and I'll just start off by saying I love old firearms. I love the fact that this particular one is over 100 years old and the metal is still in good shape. It still functions, I believe. I haven't fired it, but there's no reason for me to doubt that it functions because it still cycles and it still, firing pin still actuates. They are amazing, and I mean, I love the history behind them. I love how many of them were produced, why they were produced, who got to use them. I love everything about them. And I've been looking for one of these for a while. I would like to have one of everything, but you got to start somewhere. And the best thing about this is very affordable. Okay, I purchased this for just like 300 bucks, which for something that's 105 years old, that's what I want to say, that this one apparently was made in 1917. I can't find any markings on it to denote that, but I believe it to be true. So 1917 Carcano. Not the actual name of it, but commonly known as the Carcano because of the person who designed this rifle. His last name was Carcano, and that's kind of how firearms get their names a lot of times. The actual original designator for this was the Model 91 because they were first introduced in 1891. So these rifles virtually unchanged. I mean, you just think about that. That's 130 odd years ago. That's crazy. And here they are today on my table that we're looking at. I mean, this particular one is still 105 years old, but you think about like how many people's hands this went through, what it was used for, you know, just the history. If these firearms could talk, it would be amazing. So I'll give you a little information about this. And, you know, very similar looking, at least not this particular one, because this is the carbine, the Cavalry carbine edition, but very similar in the kind of whole magazine design to the Mosin Nagant. So if you saw this from a distance, you might think it was a Mosin Nagant. You also might think it's that Japanese firearm that Arcasana. Somebody correct me on that in the comments. There's a Japanese firearm, and they were actually first produced by Italy. So maybe Mr. Carcano looked at that and said, yeah, I think I can use a lot of those designs into this. Or maybe it happened the other way around. I'm not sure, but that's how things were done back in the day. So cartridge-wise, it takes a 6.5 by 52, which is a little bit strange. And for those of you not in the know, you're probably thinking, I'll never find one of those, but they still produce it today. They still produce the cartridge for this firearm today. You're just going to have a hard job finding it right now because of, you know, supply shortages for unknown reasons. So, like I said, it was originally called the Model 91, and they were produced from, believe it or not, 1891 all the way up to 1945. So, they produced almost 3 million of these things. That's including all the variants, but almost 3 million of these particular firearms were produced, and they're still being used. I won't say in service, but they're still being used in some countries. They were used in World War I. They were used in World War II by the Italians, and in World War II they were actually used by some of the German troops as well, which is kind of interesting. I guess maybe they had a harder time getting Mauser ammunition if they were entrenched with the Italians. Who knows? I didn't look too far into the weeds about how that came about, but I know that some Germans used the Carcano in the Second World War. And it's a much service after the Second World War, especially in the Middle East, because they were so plentiful, so cheap, and relatively easy to get their hands on. So, I mean, they were in Libya, they were in Tunisia, etc., etc., etc. Probably because for being a 107-year-old firearm, it's fairly light. I mean, I know it's only got a 17.7 or almost 18-inch barrel for the Cavalry version, but it's like a little over 7 pounds, which is pretty amazing when you consider what materials they were using back then and what availability they had. Like nowadays, you know, everybody's going synthetic, synthetic, synthetic because it shaves so much weight off. But back then it was all like hardwood and cold steel, and they just like blued it and, you know, put it together and put some oil on it, trying to protect the troops from themselves so they would still have a functioning firearm. The sling attachment, I think, on the Cavalry edition is really cool. It's got this like recessed kind of little roll pin in there that is fastened down by 2 screws, so there wouldn't be too much sticking out, and it would allow you to carry the firearm flat on its side. And you can see the sling attachment in the front flat on its side, so if you sling it, you're not going to have this integrated magazine like whacking into your back, or even worse, you know, the bolt if you were to carry it that side. So it's nice and flat on this side, and they said, hey, let's stick a sling attachment on both sides, and I think that's really amazing. And again, it's all intact, and it's 105 years old, so not only was it well thought out, but it took some abuse. And you're probably looking at the wood right now, and this thing is full of I mean, there's a few gouges, but it's mostly dense. There's a lot of cosmoline that's kind of soaked into the wood, so I'm gonna think that it's birch. I think ones before 1917 were done in a walnut, but I think this is birch, and it's just so disgustingly filthy with oil and cosmoline that it's kind of taken on some of the color. If you look around here, where you would certainly be applying a lot of oil to where, you know, your bolt is, then you can see how dark the wood is there. So I think it's just 105 years of use and probably abuse. I was a soldier. I know that I maintain my weapon clean, but I mean, if it fell, I'm not going to cry. Whereas if I go out hunting, I might cry if I drop one of my firearms. So, a little more stats on it. Like I said, there was 3 million of them made. That includes all variants, and I think the longest one is the straight up rifle, which is still called the Model 91 or the Carcano rifle, and that is a staggering 30.7 inch barrel. So it's way out there. It's long, 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 long. This particular model is, like I said, just shy of 18 inches. I think it's 17.7, and there's everything in between. They even had, I believe, a shorter version and a more compact version that they gave to their special troops. I don't know how special they were, but you know, paratroopers, whatever. And there wasn't much for cavalry. I mean, like in World War II, people weren't riding much for horseback and conducting war that way. So I'm thinking this was probably passed on paratroopers. If you know anything about that, please comment below, because I think, like I said, sometimes people get a little piece of history, and if it's not documented on books, then it could be lost. So if you have an uncle, a grandfather, whatever, a great uncle maybe, or a great grandfather that has, or you know, had one of these, maybe brought it back from the war as part of the war spoils, and you know something about it, please leave a comment. I love them. I just think they're fantastic. I love the World War II era firearms, whatever it is, bolt action. I love the German firearms, the Swiss-made ones. I mean, I'd love to have a Mauser. Good luck getting one now. I'd love to have the Carbine 98, of course, but they're just few and far between. This kind of popped up, and I said, well, I better get one now before they're gone. People can't get the Mausers and stuff, so they're kind of going over to the Schmidt Rubin and some of those other firearms, and they're kind of taking up those. So anyway, if you could find one, I think they're a great firearm. They're fairly accurate for what it is. I mean, a mass-produced issue to every soldier. I don't think you'd be disappointed with it, put it that way. Again, 7 pounds of the rifle. I think that with the 30.7 inch barrel is going to weigh in at like 8.5 pounds. So even the long rifle, it is still fairly, you know, compact and light considering what it was. The bullet leaves the barrel at a staggering 2,300 feet per second. Again, it is the 6.5 by 52 rimless cartridge, which was kind of neat for that era of firearms. And it has an effective range on paper out to 1,100 yards. 1100 meters, which is, again, very, very impressive considering what they had to work with. There is a 6-round internal magazine, and you can kind of see the little block down there, or the opening, but you're going to load it from the top. It's a little stiff because it is gummed up a little bit with cosmoline. So you're going to load it from the top, and you have one of these integrated chargers. So this, you can put 5 rounds in, and you can still buy these. So you can put 5 rounds in that, and just load it in through there, push the rounds down in, and then you can put one in the chamber while you're pushing down, okay? And you can actually carry 6 rounds, which is, again, a fairly significant or substantial capacity for a firearm of that time. And I'll let you listen to the trigger, but the trigger is actually, I was kind of surprised. There's a very long pull, okay, to get it to where it wants to break, and it feels a little spongy, but again, this firearm is got some residue of cosmoline on it. So anyway, it's a little stiff at the very beginning, but I mean, you hit that wall and it breaks very crisp, shockingly. So, a decent rifle, and I bet you everybody in the world knows about this rifle, even if you don't think you know about this rifle. Not this particular one, but infamously, it was the one that was used to assassinate John F. Kennedy, allegedly. Okay, and that was on November 22nd, 1963. So, Dallas, Texas. So you're welcome for that little piece of history knowledge. Cool thing too, back in World War II, right? Nobody went to war without a bayonet. And so I think they were like a little bit afraid of troops losing the bayonet. So they said, well, we'll just fasten one to the rifle. And I mean, that is cool. That is like 18 inches long, and it is a very pokey. And somebody actually did a very good job of maintaining this, because it does have some oil residue on it. Again, there's still that gummed up cosmoline. I can keep finding it, but there's actual oil on this firearm. So when I went to get it, or when I went to look at it, I saw there was another one that the wood stock was in amazing shape, but all the metal was very badly worn, and I mean, it had some little bit more than surface rust. There was some pitting on it. And then I found this one, and I said, well, I mean, I see a couple of gouges on it. Let's call them history gouges, okay, because I'm sure this firearm has some history, but I didn't see any cracking in the stock. I saw some gouges on it, which I'm going to take out, so teaser alert. I am going to do a restoration, and a mild restoration on this. I'm going to bring it back to the color that it was when it was originally issued, when it came off the rack. I am not going to remove too much in the way of the history that has happened to it. I just want to clean up the cosmoline that might be soaked into the wood, and really take care of that chamber, because I can see it even in the bolt, in the grooves for the bolt action. There's some cosmoline built in there. So I'm going to clean it up really nice, and I'm going to do a video on this, and maybe if you have some older firearms at home, you can follow along. I've watched a ton of videos, and I do a little bit of woodworking, so I kind of know what I'm doing there. And I know how to maintain firearms. So that's why I thought I want a project, but I don't want something that's overwhelming, that's garbage. And this firearm is definitely worth preserving. So that's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to preserve it, and like I said, not remove all the history. Nice thing about this firearm too is it's got the matching barrel and stock. So a lot of times when these went in for a retro, or a refit, or like say it had a smashed stock, they would just put something on it and they didn't care. They were going to put 2 firearms together and make one. And a lot of times when you find Milsurp firearms, that's what you're going to end up with. And if you're not a purist, you don't care. But it's kind of nice when you have one that is matching. So I could see the 1267 here and then up on just forward of the chamber, there's a 12.67 stamped in there. So that's what we have, guys. I hope you enjoy it. I love these things. They're just like cool old firearms. I love all cool old firearms, and this one here is just like, you'd still use this. I mean, I would hunt deer with this. I'm not going to. I have other deer hunting rifles, but you certainly could, and that's what happened to a lot of them, right? Post World War II, people brought them back. Maybe they probably went after this one just because this would be a great bush gun, but even the old Lee Enfields and stuff, they chopped them, they made them into hunting rifles. It's unfortunate. They didn't think about what would happen in the future, but there's still some decent representations of how they were originally hanging out there. So do your homework, go find one. They're cool. Like I said, $300. I don't know how long they're going to last at $300. Because as the more sought after firearms disappear off the market, people are going to ones like this. And this one here is in fantastic shape. I hope it shows up in video on how good the metal is on this, and I don't think it's been retouched. So, hope you like the video. If you do, click like. If you don't like it, tell me what you don't like about it in the comments, and please subscribe. It's kind of cool. I like it. I like seeing the numbers go up. So, if you're a fan of me, I'm a big fan of you guys. I really appreciate everything you guys do, and we'll talk to you at another time. Again, I'm the guy with beard, guns, and gear.